You're born in Grozny in 1989. By the time you're 6, you know the difference between a Kalashnikov and an RPG by the sound of the reload. Your father runs a bakery. One morning, as he opens the shutters, a stray rocket turns the storefront into a smoking crater. Your mother lasts 5 weeks, not from the war, but from the vodka she drinks to forget it. You spend the next 3 years in a displacement camp on the Georgian border, a place that smells of kerosene and despair. By the age of 9, you've already learned the most important lesson of your life. The world runs on firepower, and the people who supply it never sleep in camps like this. You survive by being useful. The camp is crawling with NGOs, and they all need someone who speaks the local language. You learn English from an Irish aid worker and German from a Swiss logistics officer. By 14, you're running the camp's unofficial supply network, tracking rations, managing fuel shipments, knowing exactly which truck carries what and when it arrives. You have a mind for systems, spotting weak links in a supply chain like other kids spot candy bars. An older man notices this. He doesn't wear a lanyard or carry a clipboard. He works for people who move things that don't appear on any manifest. His name is Sergei. He takes you to a cafe in Tbilisi where the espresso machine still bears bullet scars in the chrome. You're rotting here, he says, counting rice bags for people who file reports that nobody reads. He explains there's serious money in moving cargo, not aid, product. Use shipments to buyers in places that don't officially exist on any route. The pay is 15 times what the UN offers. You're 16. You say yes. You don't ask why the crates are welded shut. The first few years are technically clean, textiles to Azerbaijan, farming equipment to Tajikistan, generators to South Sudan. You learn the real game isn't cargo, it's documentation. Bills of lading, certificates of origin, phytosanitary permits, boring paperwork that border guards skim for 2 seconds before stamping and waving you through. You learn that a container marked industrial pumps can hold almost anything if the seals look official and the signatures look real. You register your first shell company in Malta. It exists only as a brass plaque on a door and a fax machine that nobody answers. By 21, you've erased yourself from every database that matters. The first dirty job arrives disguised as a favor. Sergei summons you to a hotel bar in Baku. A client needs machinery delivered to eastern Ukraine. Official crossings are locked down. The only option is a convoy moving at night through unmonitored forest roads. Machinery, Sergei says with a grin that answers every question you're not asking. When they crack the containers at 2 a.m. in a frozen clearing, you see what machinery means. 3,000 assault rifles and enough anti-tank rounds to reorganize a government. The men don't shake your hand. They just count crates. You drive home $70,000 richer. You tell yourself it was a one-time thing. It's never a one-time thing. You learn the magic words of your industry. End user certificate. This document tells exporting governments the weapons are going to a legitimate military or police force, like, with the right bribes, a colonel's retirement fund here, a minister's daughter's tuition there, you can get an EU for anything. You purchase 8,000 pistols for the Chadian National Guard. The shipment leaves Bulgaria by rail. Somewhere in Libya, the train cars derail due to track damage, and the cargo ends up with a militia that has no flag and no name. Nobody audits. Nobody follows up. The paperwork dead ends at the EU. You stop renting cargo space. You buy your own fleet. 2 Antonov turboprops from a defunct Kazakh freight company. They cost $45,000 each and look like they belong in a Soviet aviation museum. The paint is peeling. The instruments are held together with electrical tape and prayers, but they fly. You hire a crew chief named Oleg. He ran supply drops for the Russian army in the 90s. He drinks before every flight, claiming it steadies his hands. He smokes unfiltered cigarettes in the cockpit and lands by feel when instruments fail. He doesn't care what's in the hold. He doesn't want to know. That's the foundation of a perfect business relationship. Now you own the entire pipeline. You take a contract to deliver emergency relief supplies to a security firm in Central Africa. The manifest says tents and water tablets. The crates contain shoulder-fired missiles and belt-fed machine guns. You fly at night, hugging the terrain too low for radar. One misjudged tree line, and you're a smoking hole in the savannah. You land on a dirt strip carved from elephant grass. A commander in mirrored aviators pays you with a canvas bag of rough diamonds mined by prisoners you'll never meet. You weigh them on a pocket scale, close enough. You signal your crew, move, move, move. You realize you're not a courier anymore. You're the oxygen that keeps these wars breathing. Without you, they'd fight with machetes. With you, they have mortars and artillery. It feels like power. You start taking bigger contracts. Disassembled armored vehicles labeled mining equipment, sniper systems labeled surveying instruments. A helicopter gunship is hard to hide, but an agricultural crop duster clears customs without a second glance. You learn every port official has a number. Junior inspectors cost $300 and a carton of cigarettes. Harbor masters require a Land Rover and tuition for their kids at American universities. You pay gladly. It's just overhead. You meet the buyers. They're not savages. They're often educated, eloquent, even funny. One discusses Tolstoy while his teenage soldiers load your cargo onto pickups. Another plays jazz piano while you count rough stones at his dining table. You're the rainmaker. You bring the thunder. You learn that the threat of weapons is often more valuable than the weapons themselves. Sometimes just the rumor of an inbound shipment makes a government garrison abandon their posts. You're not selling hardware. You're selling fear. These conflicts aren't about ideology. They're about logistics. And you are the best logistics man on the continent. The money demands a lifestyle. You buy a chalet in the Austrian Alps. To your neighbors, you're a retired commodities consultant. Boring, forgettable. That's the strategy. You have a wine cellar worth more than the apartment building where you were born. You keep an emergency bag in your closet with $500,000 in bearer bonds and 5 passports, each from a different country. Each a different escape route. You rotate burner phones every 5 days. You never sit with your back to the door. You check your car for explosives every morning before turning the ignition. This is routine. The overhead of staying alive. You try to build something normal, a girlfriend who thinks you're an import-export, which isn't technically a lie, a gray tabby that sleeps on your chest every night, dinner parties with neighbors who discuss ski conditions and property values, but you can never stop scanning. Every vehicle idling too long near your house is a threat assessment. Every stranger holding eye contact is a potential problem. You smile, pour champagne, discuss the weather, all while mapping exit routes in your peripheral vision. The chalet isn't a home. It's a gilded cage with excellent insulation and a clear sight line to the tree line. Everything shifts when the intelligence services come calling. A meeting is arranged at a private club in Zurich. The man across from you looks like a retired professor. Cardigan, reading glasses, soft voice, soft hands. He works for the BND. "We've been tracking your operations, Horror," he says calmly. "Somalia, Myanmar, Eastern Congo." He slides a thick dossier across the table. Surveillance photos of your planes, satellite images of your airstrips, transcripts of calls you thought were encrypted. "We can make this file vanish," he says, "or we can make you vanish. Your decision." There's a third path. You work for them now. You become a specialist in government-sanctioned trafficking. Nations can't be seen arming insurgents. It's a diplomatic nightmare and a PR disaster, but they can hire a contractor with plausible deniability. The money flows from a defense ministry to a shell company in the Caymans. That company purchases surplus weapons from a depot in Moldova. Your planes fly cargo to a joint training exercise in Turkey, where it goes missing from inventory and somehow crosses into a war zone. You just committed 23 felonies across 9 jurisdictions, but the crimes aren't crimes when governments are the clients. They're strategic initiatives. You're an asset with a leash. The agencies stop requesting, they instruct. Fly here, deliver this, ask nothing. You're too valuable to eliminate and too informed to release. You know which governments secretly armed which rebel factions. You know which generals took bribes and how much they cost. You know where the mass graves are because you shipped the ammunition that filled them. Every intelligence service on the planet has a thick file with your name on it. Half want to prosecute you, the other half want to hire you. Sometimes it's the same agency, depending on who won the last election. The collapse starts with a ceasefire. Some war you've been feeding for 8 years suddenly ends. Presidents shake hands at a summit, diplomats pop champagne, the world applauds. Peace agreements create complications, specifically people who know too much. You get an encrypted message from your handler. Situation evolving. We need to meet at a hotel bar in Prague. He looks exhausted, like he hasn't slept in days. A new government is launching an anti-corruption campaign. They need a headline. You're the headline. You're the merchant of death. You disappear for 8 months, rotating through safe houses, Beirut, Phnom Penh, Minsk. You burn passports, buy new ones, trust nobody, sleep in 2-hour shifts, keep a pistol in your waistband at all times. But they find you. They always find you. You're in a departure lounge in Cyprus, the same island where you registered your first shell company 18 years ago. There's a symmetry to it. Men in tactical gear flood the terminal. You're thrown to the floor, zip-tied, hauled into a van. The media calls you the merchant of death. They don't mention the government arresting you or your best customers. The trial is theater. The verdict was written before opening arguments. They sentence you to 35 years in a supermax facility. Solitary confinement, no visitors, no phone calls. You're not a prisoner. You're an archive. They're not punishing you. They're storing you. You know too much to ever walk free. Every day is identical. Concrete walls, buzzing fluorescent lights that never turn off, a tray that appears through a slot 3 times a day. You dream about the wars you fed, the faces of child soldiers you armed, villages erased because you delivered the firepower. The nightmares are your only cellmates now. But here's the thing about arms dealers, you never stop being useful. 12 years in, a diplomat visits your cell. There's a prisoner exchange being negotiated. Russia wants you back. America wants someone else. Your currency now, a chip on someone's negotiating table. They fly you to Moscow, where you're officially released but unofficially watched around the clock. You live in a flat assigned by the FSB. A handler visits weekly. You're not incarcerated anymore, but you're not free either. You're just an entry on someone else's balance sheet, waiting to be traded again. Somewhere right now, a kid in a refugee camp is learning his 3rd language. He's organizing supply shipments, making himself indispensable, catching the eye of a man who doesn't work for any aid organization. The cycle doesn't need you anymore. It never did. You were just the current version. There's always a newer model waiting to deploy. The wars don't stop because you're gone. The weapons keep moving. Someone else will bring the rain. Someone else will be the magician. And the machine runs on blood and paperwork, and there's never a shortage of either. That's a wrap for today. The story you just heard is fiction, but the arms trade is very real. The shell companies are real. The forged certificates are real. Somewhere right now, a cargo plane flies low over a jungle, carrying crates that are definitely not agricultural equipment. If this one made you think, drop a comment below and let me know your biggest takeaway. Subscribe for more deep dives like this. See you in the next one.